Government notice recommitted.
The sitting is resumed.
Government notices recommitted.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, the vesting in the National Housing Corporation of a parcel of land situated at White Park Road and Country Road, being the land of the former Louis Lynch Secondary School, together with the buildings thereon, in the parish of St. Michael in this island, for sale to the West India Biscuit Company Limited.
Sir, government business resumed. Order number 2. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing and Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, the vesting in the National Housing Corporation of the parcel of land situated at White Park Road in the parish of St. Michael in this island, for the public purpose of housing development.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me first begin by saying that this matter has been ongoing for quite some time. In fact, it dates back to, from what I see here, I think August of 2013. And essentially, this piece of land was called Coombs House. It is 3,380 square meters. And the intention of the government at the time was to acquire this land. And they proceeded to acquire the land for onward vesting in the National Housing Corporation as a housing project. Unfortunately, that vesting had not taken place until now today, and once this resolution passes, we'll finally be able to do the vesting in the National Housing Corporation. So it is, of course, a very important vesting. The National Housing Corporation, we've actually had permission from the Crown, and we have started some preliminary work. We've had the town country planning, and we have the designs. We intend to put a total of 5 quads on this site, which will give us 20 units. And I want to make the proposed plan development a document of the house, where we have the quads arranged on the land together with an active lifestyle space on that property. So we've started. We recognize that housing continues to be a problem, and we are trying and endeavoring to be able to fit as many housing solutions as we can. This 20-unit project will be a rental project as opposed to a project for sale. And we, as I said, we started work, foundations have started, and we anticipate to have this project completed in the next 4 to 6 months. But of course, this takes us to a wider aspect of housing. And it took me back, Mr. Speaker, to again, I wasn't even an MP then. So Henry Ford, if you permit me, the former member for Christchurch West was the member of Parliament. The former, back one, was the member for Christchurch West at the time. I think it would have been 2001, 2002. And Sir Henry called me and said, William, they have a fire in St. Matthias. Meet me there. When myself and Sir Henry arrived at the fire in St. Matthias, the fire was still going. It was still going. It ended up being the total loss of 3 houses and the partial loss of 2. Immediately, what comes to mind is, so how do we house these people? How do we provide housing for these people? Some of them at the time had young children. So Henry says straight up, but you know, we're building some houses up in Bonnets, what we call the new block. And immediately, within a matter of days, we were able to get these people that were had lost their housings in the fire to be housed in, was almost complete, but not totally complete, what we call the new block in Bonnets. They are still there today. Incidentally, the place where their houses were is still an open space today. And also, after all these years, one of the houses that had part of it destroyed is still there. And I hope that maybe the EPD will go and look at it and have that house taken down at some point, because that also is still there today. But it brings to me a greater point. How do we provide emergency housing in Barbados? How do we provide emergency housing when that great time of need occurs for someone? And it makes us think of the storm response and what we're having to do with just a freak storm that passed through our area just a few days ago. Mr. Speaker, you could imagine that small, short-acting, very compact storm damaged 97 houses in Barbados. 97 houses it damaged. We have done assessments so far on 54 of those houses, 52 of those houses. And of that 52, 18 of those houses will need a total rebuild. 4 will be materials only. 7 will have minor repairs, and 23 major repairs, with 45 yet to be assessed. So it makes us think, how well are we prepared for when we have a bigger storm? How well are we prepared with emergency housing when we have a Category 2 or Category 3 come to our shores? And what policies and what programs we have in place to deal with emergency housing? So this is something that will be certainly engaging the ministry to see how best we can provide emergency housing in Barbados. Because we recognize that housing is a problem. We recognize that finding the land to put houses on is a problem. We recognize that when you find the land and you have the designs for the house, but you can't get the money to put in the services, put in the roads, put in the electrical, put in the water, do the drains. It is a massive undertaking each and every step of the way. But it is something that we intend to wrestle to the ground. So we recognize, Mr. Speaker, that we have to tackle the housing problem. We recognize that our housing stock is not at the best. Indeed, many of the houses and the standard of the houses has deteriorated significantly. And we have to assess what can we do to make them more hurricane resilient. What can we do in the short term? What can we do in the medium term? And what do we have to do in the long term to be able to make our houses more hurricane resilient, better suited to the environment that we find ourselves in, and also more affordable for the average person? All of these things we're looking at within the Ministry of Housing, and this is something that we intend to resolve as quickly as possible. I also want to advise that this location that was called Coombs House for many, many years, you would recall that we had the general manager of the National Housing Corporation, Mr. Garvey Aline, in fact, was an asset to the corporation for a long time. And we intend to offer, when we are completed this development, to change the name in recognition of the service to the country and to the National Corporation to Aline Court instead. So, Mr. Speaker, it is certainly a development that is welcomed. We intend to spend about $560,000 per quad. The monies have already been approved via supplemental through this Parliament for the $2 million, and we are very excited at getting this project completed in the shortest possible time to be able to provide housing for some of our people. And with those words, Mr. Speaker, I would ask that this resolution do not pass.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, sir. And that'll be just as brief as was the honourable member who just spoke and took his seat. There is, in the White Park Road area, it is actually located in the corner of Country Road going off White Park Road and Skeet Road in Bank Hall in St. Michael West, an area of open land large enough that it could be used for several purposes to the benefit of the community. Next to the church. It's going to be used shortly. I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister for Housing, Member Christchurch West, to let us know as soon as it is convenient for him if that land is going to be used by the government and the purpose to which it will be put. Housing. I'd like to suggest that when he sits down with his people to consider the purpose for which the land may be acquired and to which it may be put, that he has some consultation with the people's representative for St. Michael West. Because the interests of the people of St. Michael West are near and dear to my heart, and have been for quite some time. I have been a resident there, and I've been a dutiful representative since 1999, even while in opposition. So I really would look forward to hearing privately, personally, and also publicly on that particular matter. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, there is a facility used formerly by the National Housing Corporation, again on Country Road, and opposite the main building headquarters of the NHC. It's on the other side of the road. And it was left in disuse for a few years. The old welfare building, yeah. Yes. And while the party now in office held the reins of administration between 1999 2008, fairly early in that period, we had raised with the then Prime Minister the possibility of seeing developed there at that site a community resource center, as was the party's posture at that time in terms of its community institutional architecture development program was concerned. They were building community resource centers around, and we had requested that that be done at St. Michael West on that spot. And in fact, the then Prime Minister, former late Prime Minister, had agreed, and the building was extended and prepared for, in fact, the setting up of a community resource center in that area for the people of Hinesbury Road and Bank Hall and the wider St. Michael West communities. Much had been done to refurbish the building. An addition was put to the building, and all was set for that program, except that the government then lost office, party and government then lost office, and that matter was left in abeyance. And I wonder again today, what is the position with that facility? Again, that, as I said, is in St. Michael West. I do remember as well having discussions with the Maria Holder Foundation people with respect to helping with the establishment of some kind of youth-oriented facility in that area, either on the spot now vacant or on the site where the building, NHC-related, welfare-related, had been renovated, so to do. But all of that is behind us. I simply seek to ask what is the latest on these matters, because these are facilities, opportunities of which the people of St. Michael West can benefit. I say that strongly. That is a better approach to people's representation. That is a better approach to people's representation than seeking to buy votes. That is a better approach to representing people than seeking to buy votes. That is a better way to approach the business of representing people than aligning yourself with people known to be involved with the drug trade in Barbados and criminal activity and hoping for their support among the elements with which they are familiar and with whom they associate. It is better to build out community facilities. It is better to facilitate people's development than to try to get political support either by buying people's votes or by forming relationships with people involved in criminal and drug-related activities. I am sure,
On a point of order,
sure.
Mr.
I'm sure he
Speaker.
doesn't disagree with that.
On a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable
Just,
Christ Church.
just to be clear, the honourable member seems to be misleading the House, because I am sure that he's not suggesting that any honourable member in here would have entered into any concept of buying votes from any known drug leader or drug lord. And obviously, he is suggesting or insinuating that happens. And I know the honourable member knows very full well that that kind of thing does not happen.
4 more times, please. I am neither suggesting, declaring, insinuate. I am
Continue, honourable
neither
member.
suggesting, declaring, insinuating, or any such, in any such fashion indicating that any member in here is engaging in buying votes, or that any member in here is aligning himself or herself with anybody involved in criminal activity. If that's the case, I don't know about it. So I will not suggest that, imply that. All I am saying, it is better if you want to help to improve the lot of people in these urban communities, and I can speak in the name of St. Michael West. I'm sure my colleague to my immediate left, close to me, will speak in the interest of those in St. Michael East. I'm saying if you're going to improve the lot of people, then these are the types of things you need to do. Get a hold of that land, construct something that allows for training and the development of young people. Use that abandoned facility that was being prepared for technology center to address the needs of young people, unemployed people, or people who are in need of skills development and training or what have you. And they approach that in various. So I'm simply saying that these are better ways to seek to represent people than to attempt to buy votes or to align yourself to court support through known or alleged drug dealers or people engaging in criminal activity. Now, I don't know how I am misleading the House if I say that. I'm sure the honourable member for Christchurch West on reflection will agree with me and likely make the same call himself. I know that when I courted support in St. Michael West, I neither bought votes nor aligned myself with criminal elements. And I would expect, therefore, that every other member in this House acquitted himself or herself likewise and stayed away from that. My advice would be to those who aspire to get here also to stay away from that and to give themselves to the support of this type of activity, Mr. Speaker. That is all I am saying. And I don't mean to deprive you of any work necessarily by what I say and suggest. I'm sure there's plenty of work out there for you to do, because there's always the dynamic of crime, especially in Barbados, of serious crime in Barbados of today. Then the question of the Louis Lynch School plan, also in the White Park Road area. Been sitting there now for quite some time. And government, sorry? Sorry? You just laid a resolution on that, so we're getting some action on that? That too? You getting some action on that too? I wasn't aware of that, Mr. Speaker, and I'm glad to hear that, because the building has just been sitting there now for quite good. It's laid in good time. And we look forward to the substance of, am I going to get a sight of that resolution before it comes here? All right. And all we're saying here is, while government is engaged in its program of refurbishing plant and upgrading government buildings, we should not really persist with a situation where the Louis Lynch facility is just sitting there and vagrants and paros making use, you're selling it. Well, I don't want to anticipate when it comes. We will see what lies therein when it reaches it. Now, I don't know if the honourable member for Christchurch West has anything to do at all with the policy emanating out of the Urban Development Commission, but he has been bringing a lot of measures here having to do with vestings of land, acquisition of land, and so forth. And vibrant, very vibrant program, the Urban Tenantry Program, Mr. Speaker, of which you'll be very aware, being representative of an urban constituency, benefited significantly the people in St. Michael West between 1999 2008. St. Michael West, I've repeatedly said, has more tenantry areas than any other urban constituency. It has certainly some of the largest. If you start down at Spring Garden by the Paris Gap Westbury area, you come right up to Hinesbury Road, a whole set of tenantries, all through President Kennedy Drive and Richmond, Allkins and Manning Land, whole set of tenantry lands. And under the Arthur administration, that program of transfer of title, dealing with the business of ownership for poor and dispossessed people, bringing people into ownership in a better state of economic well-being, platforming them where they can improve themselves, giving them a help out. And that program was a tremendous benefit to many people in St. Michael West. I do not know what has happened. The administration subsequent to the Arthur administration would have had their own policy. I'm not too sure where that would have carried many of the residents. We've got an administration in office for 3 years now and some, and I simply ask what's happened to that program. Ownership is absolutely vital if we're going to change, transform Barbados, patterns of ownership. Said that repeatedly. I've heard the Honourable Prime Minister speak to it as well. Want to see some substantive action to follow that which has been said, and to ensure that many of those who still live in a tenanted relationship in the St. Michael West with respect to lands can be facilitated. Even in these harsh economic times, we're finding money to give to that cause and to give to that cause and to give to this group and to give to that group. But we must not forget that programs like these really elevate people and give them a platform from which, in economic terms, their lives can take off. Now, it's been drawn to my attention, Mr. Speaker, you would not know anything about these things. You don't come into Baxter's Road. That there is some contemplation. You don't come into...
I don't come into Baxter's Road.
On Tuesday mornings.
You might be surprised. I mean, leave Baxter's Road on Tuesday morning. Leave Baxter's Road on Tuesday morning. In the wee hours.
That was a tongue-in-cheek remark. You are all over St. Michael, I am aware. Not only because your business takes you there, but because you are a man of the people,
Correct.
In touch with the people. Your robes do not separate you from the people or create distance between you and them. Neither these robes nor the other set with which you adorn yourself from time to time. You're a man of the people, and robes don't dispossess you of your sense of balance, your sense of care and compassion for people. But I understand that at Baxter's Road, there's some contemplation now. Minister of Housing perhaps can speak to it. Is there any plan to expand the fish fry area which is located on that northern end, I suppose. No comment, of Westbury Road. I raise it only because residents have raised it with me. And they're concerned that they're hearing that there are plans to expand that area a little bit, and that not that they're objecting to the expansion, but they're objecting to any plan to expand without reference to themselves or consultation with themselves. Expanded area brings increased traffic, it brings increased activity. This activity tends to stretch very well late into the night. It can bring increased noise of entertainment. And the residents are simply asking if this is to be done, whether it's the Ministry of Agriculture or whoever it is, if this is to be done, that consultation be had with them out of a sense of respect and civility and decency. And I ask for that on their behalf, and I trust that the word would fall on those ears that need to hear, because it is better to seek to represent people in these ways than to try to buy people's votes or to align yourself with criminal elements, hoping that you can get support in that way. There's some issues, sir, Country Park Towers, in the blocks themselves. The normal things where people complain about lack of repairs and all kinds of stuff. And perhaps Country Park Towers is one of the newer, relatively speaking, housing development projects. Has 2 phases, but even in the second phase, which is more recent, there are complaints about lack of repairs and lack of attention, and some situations relative to the housing complex, the housing blocks that were there from inception, probably were not satisfactorily addressed when the buildings were erected there in the first place. I would simply ask if the minister could have his people give some due attention. People have to live there, and these things are very inconveniencing from time to time. They're not new, they're not different from anywhere else, but they do exist there, and it is my duty to report it. Thank you, sir.
Honourable members, Michael East.
Thank you,
Honourable
Mr.
Leader,
Speaker.
turn off your mic, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Speaker. I just want to make a short intervention as well. I'm very concerned about how we are moving forward in terms of responding to changing conditions all around us. Mention was made before about the freak storm. We are talking a lot, and the minister did make mention to environmental changes. But obviously what we are witnessing tells us that we have to put the required architecture and the required engineering methodologies in place to resist or show some level of resilience to the changes of climate. The minister indicated how many houses were damaged as a consequence of just a freak storm for a couple of seconds. And so I'm hoping that we are taking all that into consideration, and how the government will be able to assist the very vulnerable in society with some kind of new grant or program that we can help people from the inception to at least ensure that their houses are well secured to meet some of the current issues that we are faced with. Most forms of architecture over the years, regardless of which country it is, it normally responds to the environmental changes, obviously designs that would require special aesthetics, and environmental changes in relation to heat, rain, bad weather in general. I would love to see a policy even before we come to Parliament, where a number of professional people are very much involved in having a discussion on how we treat to maximizing the use of the land space. There's lots of small pockets of land all around, especially in the St. Michael's communities, small pockets. So we don't have the square meters that might be required to get 50 or even 100 units at one time. But my view is that we are trying to reach a major target in densely populated areas, and we are trying also to respond to the people who live directly in the densely populated areas. I know once upon a time we had a policy in government on the Barbados Labour Party where at least 80% of those houses were exclusively allocated to the representative in the specific area. Over the last few years, all kinds of things happened. The area densely populated, somebody coming with some ad hoc arrangement, and people in the area experiencing all the social challenges of being homeless, the discomforts of 1 million people living in one small unit. But then they will bring in another big family from outside into the same community and create other social problems in it as well. I believe that we have to be extremely clear on our housing policy as we go forward. And that cannot be done by showing land space to an architect or draftsman. And he just coming up with almost a fixed position on how these houses should be laid out in blocks. He might do a little design at the top of the roof, but basically you're seeing the same thing over and over again. All that you might see from time to time, you might get with 2 stories, 3 stories, you might get a London board type house, you may end up with a country road. The houses at the country road, which is 2 different models. I don't know what model we will get now in comparison to the other 2 that we have had there. But in many cases, it is like scratching the surface of a major problem that we have had from the inception. And when I say we, I am very clear on who we is. I'm talking about poor black people, which I'm going to preach it like the Bible over and over, right? Poor black people who are homeless in this society. We also got additional problems now where many young people are leaving home early. And what we say is what we call shanties. They can't live in the shanties. The life estimacy of a shanty is how much years? You buy damaged material and you construct a shanty. If you're 6 feet tall, you like to push out the left side and the right side where you lie down the house, right? You can't have children living in those circumstances. Government must respond to those circumstances with a clean, positive program of how we're going to, I know I am clear that it's a small state and we can't do everything. But I believe that we inject money in other areas sometimes, that we can spend some in the area. And when I'm thinking about that, sir, I'm thinking about Bellevue. I'm thinking about the Bell itself. I'm thinking about Odessa, McLean, Licorice Village areas. People live in small houses. And in many cases, the people that live in the smallest houses got the biggest families. Now, if you just got an architect drawing things and looking impressive and taking into consideration what is going to be the cost of each unit, how much money the government can afford, and you're making this a central point of assessment. And the bigger issue is that so many people at present never had the comforts of living in their house. It is better to have very early in the arrangement social workers sitting down with the architects and planning people's representatives sitting with the architects and planning, and if you're addressing a problem to suit the immediate area, then you need to hear these inputs and tell, look, I don't want you to just draw something and bring it to the government and say, I can do it better than the other contractor, and I can do it cheaper than the other contractor, but there's no body, no committee that is sitting and helping to influence the outcome of the actual the drawings that we are seeing coming before us. And then you have problems, as I said, with the environment, with the changes. And I'm hearing in another discussion, I'm hearing that sometimes we can't build the amount of houses because the houses that are signage between the houses at the end, the heat intensity is extremely high, and therefore we need to come up, and therefore we can't continue with that model. I don't agree with that. That's what the architects are there for. They should be able to tell us how we can shape a modern Barbadian architecture, not adopting anything from any other country, that we'll be able to facilitate six units across or 4 units across, but you find a way to make sure that the 4 units in the center of the 6 could still be properly ventilated. I believe these are things that we have to look at in a very serious way, sir. So the structures are important. The target is too great. And for all the years, I've been hearing the same thing. Applications at the National Housing Corporation is over 25,000. I've been hearing it for years, sir. Over 25,000. So if we're hearing that, and then we're also going to be hearing
12,000 at home.
Huh?
12,000 at home.
If you can build 12,000 at home, I agree. But I don't see why we can't build a high-rise building. I don't see why we can't do it. We have other areas across Barbados, and the reason why apparently that we're not doing it is because of the cost factor. It can't be the cost factor when we have a problem with people in a society who never own land, never own a house in their entire life. And you can't grow up running from place to place. Some people call them squatters, others call them tenants. The last administration, they had to deal with tenants, and when we brought the Tenantry Freehold Person Act, some of the greatest advocates against the Tenantry Freehold Person Act were in the previous administration. We had to make amendments to that legislation about 2 or 3 times. It went from 2 units to 3 units to 5 units. And they had a few advocates that keep saying the tenants will be deprived, the landowners will be landlords, the landlords and their children will be deprived of the land. One landlord that then utilizing the land for the same purpose that he claimed he wants to defend. You're going to make sure now that the landlord keeps owning the land to eternity, but the 6 or so tenants that live on the land with children, you don't consider that to be depriving them of anything at all. So you end up with government coming back, new legislation. The government of the day got the majority in Parliament. The government changed the legislation again. Always poor people, marginalized people being victims in the circumstances. And we need to make sure, I believe that conditions now demand that even where we have now 5 houses, I think where we started is 2 houses, we should go back there. Some amendments should be made to the legislation because there are many other persons who did not even get an opportunity to own a house then. And only because selfish politicians who are already landowners got enough land with bare grass on it, they feel that poor people should not be given the opportunity to own land as well. Now, in Liquid Village, what I would like to see, sir, and I want to thank the government at least for making the gesture, both in the Bellevue and in the Bell, and I hope that the changes that we're We are now working on it. I look forward to seeing that by next year, I'll be able to say it's an actuality. It has happened in the area. We both went through the entire community, house to house, and we carried out social surveys. I believe the Barbados Water Authority is now working inside the Liquid Village area. Okay? And the minister, I almost said Minister Dugan, but I don't know if that's parliamentary. The member for Christchurch West, although, sir, when you use these terms, the Barbadian public are going to go look for a notebook to see who is the member for Christchurch West. So I would be happy if we could be a freer, sir, bring about certain changes. I can say that Minister Dugan, because that is who he is. But if it is not parliamentary and you all want to continue with these things, fair. But sir, the member for Christchurch West has undertaken the responsibility as minister to start a social survey in my area. And I have to give you credit, sir. You did not even wait on him. You put together a team and went through your entire community and you asked the relevant and fundamental questions so that the people in those two areas now are looking forward to having water connected, which in my view, you move on time, because I was going to express my views on this specific human right. And I was not going to allow this year to finish without telling me openly how we can sign in to these conventions with any of the international agencies, and then when it comes to East, these things are not applied. So I was expecting anyhow that people to get water in my community. I have, sir, in that whole area, which is a considerable size, I can't tell you, but there are hundreds of houses there, and I have about 3 standpipes. And I heard everybody talking about washing their hands, and all that for COVID. I had people who couldn't wash their hands because they had no water. So I am grateful to know that the government at this point is now moving expeditiously to, at least after the survey, all the plans for the storage system in the both areas, that we'll be able to install water in all the homes. Water is life. Everything around you is about water, even the human body. What is life? I would like to see, that's where we were at one time. That hundreds of people. I thank you very much, sir. Listen, I'm a very genuine and grateful man. And the honourable member for Christchurch West has asked me to let the public know that he was grateful. He was kind to me and the people of St. Michael's East. And he did install, I think, 2 standpipes for me. And I'm hoping now that things are in your hand. You have a lot of money now, and you can do a lot of things that the other minister could not do. You get the money. and that you would treat me the way that a good man and the good people ought to be treated. So I'm looking forward to seeing water being installed down there, sir, which will complement having nice units and so on. But you can't have, you see the houses that we have to deal with. You can't, in a state of uncertainty, the lack of ownership, not having any leasehold arrangements inside the community. There are lots of things that poor people would like to do that they can't do. But that kind of transfer can be done. What it is that we're doing now, I'm sure that people will be able to access mortgages. The government, as I indicated to you before, will have some special funds. So this is a union government, and I would like to believe that this government will put a fund available. We spend a lot of money, we write off a lot of money for the turf club, we write off money for all different types of people in Barbados. These poor people need some things. And I always say these are the hardest workers in Barbados. These are some of the hardest workers in Barbados. And I don't want to spend all of my years in here and don't be able to go to a home across my community and see people enjoying the comforts that other people enjoyed all their lives. They just could at least some of them let them enjoy it at least for a little 10 or 20 years their lifetime. Put them in a position that they can transfer the ownership of the land to their families. So this is going to be a major and a revolutionary kind of approach, and I will hope that the government will be courageous enough to continue with doing it. There are some people who believe you don't have to spend money for barefoot people. And these are people who are scornful of hearing that the black is listen to it and hear easy. My ears real clear when it comes to people who talk stupidness, even in Parliament. And every time you get up and you talk about black people, man, you talk about them all the time. They go, oh, I hear that. And these people are Barbara Green people, you know. They'll be talking foolishness in here. Got no respect when I talk to people in here about my Lord's Hill. When I talk to people in here about the pine and the ivy in Carrington Village, some of these people who come from an agricultural background, they'll be making a lot of side remarks. Probably they feel free to behave that way because they're on the eve of the end of the political career. But I am a part of that. I will represent the people that send me to Parliament to the last day before he died. And even the day that I died, I still be representing them. And I want to tell all of you now, none of them here can stop my political career until I decide to stop it or the Almighty do so. With the wasting time. With the wasting time. Because spread any kind of rumor that Prescott ain't coming back. All kind of things. Anyhow, let me stop at housing. Sir, that is for another time. Sir, we have houses constructed across Barbados. No consideration for the disabled community. No consideration for the disabled community. And that's why I say that the community has to be very much involved in the planning. Because you have families that apply for units at the National Housing Corporation, sometimes people who, not only aging persons, but you have people who are amputees. You have people that are challenged, sometimes from birth. And then these people still got to get up those stairs. I saw some houses in St. Philip on stilts recently. And when I went up on the stairs, anybody with little size, one can go up and come down the stairs. And this is national housing units that they build, you know. The stairs is about a meter wide. A meter wide. And everybody got to turn on the side. If you buy a fridge, you can't carry a fridge up there. You got to send for an elevator or a crane to get a fridge in the house. TV. So the people who designed that never took into consideration that a poor man can want a fridge. It never took into consideration it's called a family-sized bed. A family-sized bed. These things cannot get into those houses. And I am only dignifying the work that's being done by calling it a house. It's not suitable to be even called a house. I am sure if the people who are applicants had any say on how a house should be designed, what are some of the social issues that they face as a result of these crampy shaped houses that are making available for poor people with no extra land for any improvement, as though you're saying to the general public, shut down your reproductive system. This is a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom unit, and you can't buy some of the modern equipment that everybody talking about and put in it. So what you do, make sure you visit family planning first. It seemed to be the thinking of how a special type of bourgeoisie think about poor people. That is why it's so, look, it's a major psychological damage when you see how these people's spirits call it screaming. At the just hearing the word blackness. And that is where the problem lies. I keep saying it's not that you don't like people. I love all people. But those people understand well something got to be wrong. Because when you begin to think about your own in terms of ownership, you can't own anything unless you're a thief. You want the house ain't got to be too big. Nobody can see anything wrong with a man living down in a hole with a little plywood sheet and trying to sleep on it there, like a wood cave there. Something only about 3 feet off the ground, and a man sleeping upon it there at night. Nobody is feeling the pain. You can't even get 3 cents from the welfare department. Your phone is there all the time and nobody answering the phone. And all you hear is the welfare will come here for 6 months. But you got to reach somebody at the welfare, though. So you got people now living in other people's houses because the social services are not functioning in the way in which they should function. So I want to take what the minister said today that he intends to do in terms of making low-income housing accessible for poor people. And not low-income people like what do you want in British name? There are some big glass windows. I don't know if every room air conditioned or what, but they built some at the grotto. They built some house out in the grotto. When you hear, and Valerie, when you hear the cost of these houses, and then you hear them talking about this body ain't paying rent yet, this body ain't paying the rent for the last 6 months. Well, you ask yourself what kind of conceptualization went on in terms of building the house, then discover that the house costs so much money, and because the house costs so much money, then you got to push the rent up. You don't even say that the state was sacrificing, saying we've got concessions for other people. You mean the state can sacrifice the same people's money by saying, look, bring it back to a reasonable cost or rent to the tenant, even if the state, as they would call it, end up being at a loss. But that's what I'm saying, that you have to have people around the table, not only architects and even people just in the community, general people who are interested in social issues, understand people how they're suffering as a result of not having land and not having houses. Just don't, at a specific time of your life, believe that even if a man can't hear you, try to engage in a conversation, even though you don't know sign language, because you want to vote. When you get to Parliament, do something that members of the disabled community can say, I benefit from this government when it was in office. When a man step at the front, a man that deaf step on the front door, step through a front door, he shouldn't got the problems. They got all kind of appliances, all kind of systems, electronic systems that you can install and help people, make some arrangements in the housing policy as we go forward. Have discussions with people who can come and make a suggestion of what next we can do to make life better for these people. And that is really what I would like to see, sir. And as I said to you, sir, I want to make a short intervention, especially dealing with the water issues, with the allocation of land space, with assistance of finance, wherever they can be, because we need to transform the lives of these people who are the majority, who we know very well at election time, you know. And people wait for you. People wait for you, sir. I know about it. I was around long. People wait for you. I don't care what we talk in here, at the end of the day, we have to go back to ordinary people in the communities that don't have any homes. I don't want to see a government building 10 houses.
You remember has 2 more minutes.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. I don't want to see a government building 10 houses. I have it to come to Parliament. I put a bill on the table. Then for the bill to become an act, then to engage the Governor General and all these different people to build 10 houses. And you're talking about the growth of the population, and you're saying that the population, we are underpopulated in relation to the things that we would like to do, and the way in which we need to be able to service the social services. And if you can push the population up by 50,000 more people, but you have to have houses. And if you're going to have houses, you can't have houses for them alone, and not for the very people who contributed to the development of the society. So I am thinking in that manner, sir. We are in an era where we're seeing lots of changes. Environmental changes, social changes, challenges with health, all of these things are happening. If this is to be seen as the right government at the right time, then we have to deliver. And I want to compliment the minister for doing what he's doing, and I hope that the people of St. Michael's East would get great benefits from your service, sir. So thank you very much, Mr. Minister, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for listening to me.
Honourable Member Mr. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise in support of this resolution to allow the Honourable Minister of Housing to construct some units in the White Park area. Sir, let me just say that it was heartwarming to hear the Leader of the Opposition, first of all, speak to a number of his concerns in the city area, in particular the White Park and surrounding areas, and also to then also have to acknowledge that the Honourable Minister of Housing has been very proactive, and certainly the government, in making sure that a number of the areas that have been identified are being addressed. Indeed, we pretty much just before this particular resolution would have laid a resolution to address the lands that have been lying vacant for some time, which was the site of the former Louis Lynch Secondary School. And again, we are well aware in this administration of the concerns, the unsightly area that has been, and certainly the plant that has been for many years. It has occupied our attention, certainly in Cabinet, for quite some time. And obviously from a wider perspective, I think we all recognize that with limited resources, it is important that you look at lands and across the country to be able to not only sell, but also to be able to utilize the monies from the sale of certain particular lots and properties to then reinvest into other housing developments. And I believe that when that resolution comes next week, the Honourable Minister will be able to speak more to that and to the plans that we have in relation to the sale of that property to be able to build out more housing and hopefully, no doubt, low-income housing as well. So I just wanted to say that, you know, we are thinking ahead in terms of what has to happen. I don't think trying to solve housing in any way is an easy fix. You know, I go back to the days, I think back in the late 1950s, when the Barbados Labour Party's position then was that we had to move away from the timber structures into building out more stone structures. That was the policy then. Then we came, I believe, in the late 70s, before the 76 election, and we spoke very boldly about allowing people to rent the units that we were going to construct with a view to being able to acquire those homes over a period of time. And now we find ourselves having had both administrations take a shot at creating housing facilities for our population. We then find ourselves in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic, which, apart from flagging up a number of issues in relation to healthcare and certainly education, also laid bare a number of the issues in relation to housing and accommodation for the wider population. And I say that, sir, because, you know, we treat to this issue sometimes very ad hoc, but the truth is the inequalities became very real over the course of the last year more than ever. We've had many women being put out of homes during this period, having to rely on the member for St. Thomas in relation to social care to be able to be accommodated, even the homeless shelters. We have seen people take advantage of tenants within households that they would have been renting, and being thrust you know, across the country trying to find somewhere to put a roof over their heads. We've seen children being the victims as well in these situations of trying to have their parents who have lost their jobs being able to find accommodation in a short time frame. And perhaps more importantly, we've also seen that in households where there are overcrowded conditions, you have ended up with a situation where a number of the clusters that we've experienced over the course of this pandemic have actually been accelerated because of overcrowded conditions in the first place. So the pandemic must never be taken for granted, because I suppose it is like peeling back the skin of the onion. All of a sudden you start to see the layers of all of the things that you perhaps may have ignored over the course of the past few decades. The truth is, sir, that there have been strides made, and I think there's always the argument, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael East would have alluded to, that more can always be done. And I do think that we have started the process on coming to government on this occasion of trying to turn back the hands of time somewhat. You know, it's easy for people to forget that coming to office you had to deal with these issues of sewage. You've had to deal with all the issues of water across the country, and therefore even education, bringing back the ability of students to be able to go back to the University of the West Indies. It's easy to forget because, you know, we like to look forward to things, but sometimes we don't. We often forget how we got where we are. And therefore, while our priorities have always been housing, I think what has happened over the course of the past 3 years is that we've really had to prioritize some other aspects of our development. And regrettably, in some cases, it could be argued that there have been some compromises in relation to the acceleration of the housing stock over the course of the past 3 years. Now, that said, sir, you know, I represent one of the largest housing area in the country. I'm happy that the Honourable Minister and certainly the Cabinet of Barbados has thought it fit, especially based on the period prior to the last election, to accommodate the persons in St. Michael South East through the lands at Lower Burnie. And I believe that the Honourable Minister has started to clear those lands, and I really do appreciate the thought that has gone into that particular potential development that will be built out in the fullness of time. Again, that is in keeping with the Barbados Labour Party's policy that where we can find Crown lands near to developments in terms of housing, that we need to obviously move some of our people in overcrowded conditions out of the existing conditions and be able to improve their standard of living, improve their social conditions, and of course, the end result being that we would want them to obviously be homeowners as well. And I think that that is the position and the policy in relation to other areas which the Minister has identified across all of the 30 constituencies, being able to identify lots of land owned by the Crown that would allow constituencies to have persons who are in very poor conditions being able to be accommodated and facilitated, sir. So I just wanted to say, sir, that I think that it is important that we understand the context in which some of these things are being done. First, you have to acquire You have to vest the lands. You have to, obviously, if you're going to sell, you have to find a respective buyer. If you have to engage private developers, you're going to have to enter into arrangements with them. It is not an overnight process, but from where I sit, sir, I also see that we have a number of layers of proposals on the table to be able to build out the housing sector. So whether you speak of the Hope Direct project or any of the projects under Hope, the truth is that there are different levels for different types of income earners. And of course, in all of this, we still continue to make sure that we find the relevant accommodation for the people who are most vulnerable in our society. As it relates to how, I guess, lands are allocated and certainly units are allocated, this is an age-old problem as well. I have people who have been in the system for several years. They have now got gray hair from being in the system. There are still concerns as to how we allocate, and I really hope that we can get to a point once the social survey has been completed that we have a full picture of the housing needs. I know we're getting ready to do the census as well. That's going to give us a perspective across the country as to the needs, not just the needs for today, but also the needs for the future. And I've been saying this for several years, that is really important so that as a country, we're in a position to plan, because the truth of the matter is we have to know what we're planning for. If we don't know how many children are in the house coming up of age to 18, then therefore we are not in a position, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael East has indicated, to be able to plan properly for the future. And the truth is that we have to take into account that where government fails or neglects in any way to be able to respond to the demands for housing, the people are going to find a way to construct housing for themselves. And we all have those scenarios across our constituencies where the officers, perhaps in housing, haven't been as vigilant as they're supposed to be. In some cases, town and country planning may have overlooked the illegal structures. And now we are plagued with a situation where, because we have not met the demands of the housing market, for one reason or the other, we have a number of people who are living in conditions that are not suitable. I've had children having to, all the concerns everyone has had about, or the recent discovery that many people seem to have had, of the fact that there are children who are operating in holes where they don't have access to Wi-Fi, or they don't have electricity or running water. All of a sudden, the whole society suddenly realized, because the blinkers were off, that these are the realities of what we see on the ground daily. And therefore, if we fail to address a number of these issues, we will continue to have a number of the social problems that we have been experiencing in our society. I believe, sir, that not addressing housing is a failure on any administration, simply because that is really the core of allowing people to settle themselves, allowing people to be able to be comfortable, allowing our children to respect space and their environment as well. And therefore, we are certainly committed to ensuring that we're able to build out different levels of housing, given the resources that we have available to us as well. On the issue of the inputs of members of parliament and professionals being able to weigh into the discussion as to how we do this, I know that, just last night we've been talking with the minister and other colleagues regarding a whole of government approach to assisting in highlighting the issues that are on the table from all of us, but also trying to find the solutions to the problems in the shortest time frame as well. Because it makes no sense trying to make people believe that you can fix everything, but rather trying to talk them through the realities of our financial constraints, or trying to deal with what we consider to be the low-hanging fruit. Everybody wants housing, everybody wants improved conditions of housing, but we may have to prioritize in every community the number of people that may be most vulnerable at a particular point in time, and work on getting those persons lifted out of poverty, because we're not going to be able to do it all. And I think more than anything, it's important that as leaders, certainly, that we don't give people unnecessary hope, and no pun intended by the name of the project, the Hope Project, but we can't, we come with all of these catchy phrases, helping every last person. Now we have hope. The truth is that we have to give hope to people. We have to try our best to help every last person. But we also have to be realistic in what we either indicate to people that we have the capacity to do, or what we are able to actually do at any point in time. And that's why we've taken different approaches, different layers to try to address these problems. A few months ago, the Honourable Minister, again with the blessing of the Cabinet of Barbados, addressed what we consider to be one of the low-hanging fruits, the issue of persons who had paid money into the National Housing Corporation, who were not in a position to get back their monies, and we were able to make the accommodation for those persons to be able to be refunded their monies. Now, again, it may seem like it's just a small number of people impacted, but the truth of the matter is that those monies going back into the hands of a number of the persons who would have qualified under that program has enabled many of them to be able to make repairs to their house, to generate revenue within the economy, to be able to give some of the same people who are in poorer conditions an opportunity to come and do a little carpentry work or fix a window within the houses as well. It has been a trickle-down effect, which, while it isn't felt across the board, has obviously been able to make some impact and some dent into the life of a number of our citizens. In addition to that, sir, and the Honourable Minister and others know that I'm always on this point of the maintenance of the units. I know that we've had the program, certainly across the constituencies, with the well program. Over $2 million has been spent in relation to repairing wells. I would have lost one young man in my constituency. We've seen the issues of wells across the country which have not been maintained in some cases. Some are NHC, some are private landowners. But what it does is it makes us more aware that we have a responsibility as a government, not just to say we have property, but we have to make sure that maintenance departments within ministries are functioning, and that somebody is supervising the supervisors, because these things did not happen overnight. These systems have not broken down in the last month or the last year. There are systems that we have to revisit. We have to reassess how they work and determine whether the proper accounting mechanisms are in place to ensure that not only do you report on issues in communities, but that you also have mechanisms and monies to be able to pay for the repairs that need to be done. And that is whether it is wells, that is whether it is repairing doors, that is whether it is replacing windows. There has to be not only the approach to identify the problem, but we also have to make sure that we have the finances in place to be able to address the problem, sir, as well. That said, the other area that I believe that we also have to look at is not just about building out the households for persons, but I think that we also have to look at what would be considered crown lands, the lands belonging to NHC that are in many of the various communities, and also looking at where persons may be interested in engaging in agriculture. Because the truth is that, we've inherited a system where if we were in the United Kingdom, we would have the Crown looking after a lot of these lands, helping to clean the gullies and making sure that we have all of these lovely forests and cleaning up estates. But the truth is, we don't have that type of income coming into Barbados. So the money has to come from somewhere. And I firmly believe that if the money is not able to be generated by the government of Barbados or by the private sector up front, then perhaps what we need to do is to pursue the area of the allotments in a number of these spaces and allow persons in particular, or a lot of our young people who are interested in this area, who don't want to leave and go too far from home, to have the opportunity to create some of these so-called green spaces and to get some of the community agriculture growing in communities. I am pleased, sir, to be able to stand here to say that I've seen, even within St. Michael's Southeast, a real interest from the young people and also from the elderly in the community, where we've cleared lands, persons wanting to be able to engage in agriculture. But what do we need in order to encourage it is that we need to be able to have a framework within which people can not only identify spaces they may want to operate, but also that government is also facilitating the ability of those persons to be able to operate freely in that space. Because otherwise what you will have is confusion erupting over who owns the land or who is able to utilize which part of the land. And so we must now be proactive as opposed to being reactive. whether it is in relation to those, the NHC lands or Ministry of Housing lands, and also in relation to persons who have squatted on lands as well, rather than allowing the situation to escalate where you can't get in a proper road, and then Town and Country Planning and Water Authority are then trying to figure out how to regulate something that has already gone wrong. All of us as members of Parliament can identify spaces in communities that have been lying dormant for several years, that perhaps if we just got the officers in National Housing to come on the scene with us and identify these spaces, a number of the people who could be eased in some way by being able to know that that piece of space is theirs to be able to build on, they will work towards being able to build on it, sir. And I have seen that with my own two eyes. I don't know how people get it done, but in many cases, you will see the little shanty that the Honourable Member for St. Michael East talks about evolve into something over time, because the people know they don't have nowhere to go. And that is the only place in their community that they can reside. So where we know that there are these types of lands, I believe housing will be willing to work with members of Parliament, but I think that this is another type of program that we need to explore, where we can make some decisions to allow people to accelerate and control their own housing, as opposed to it being a top-down approach all the time. Let us just find the land and let the people subdivide it, indicate clearly what it is you can build, and of course you will have the restrictions as normal, but it is important that we either run the roads or we supply the water. Because if we don't do those things, and of course the light, because if we don't do those things, then we got another problem. And therefore, government can no longer be a reactive government. Government has to be a proactive government and recognize that that time has now come, perhaps accelerated more by this pandemic now more than ever, where there are simple solutions to the problem. While we are working hard on the front line to be able to get all of the different negotiations in place with the International Monetary Fund and all of the lending agencies, there are some simple things that we still need to do. Even the lands that we can utilize, and I know the policy is coming on that soon in relation to vending, allowing people in communities where there are open spaces, owned by the Crown in most cases, to be able to create trailer parks and to create lay-bys where people can generate revenue. If people can generate the revenue on the outskirts of a number of their communities, it makes it easier for them to save the funds to be able to build what it is that they want and not what it is that is handed down from government. And therefore, we must also create those opportunities for people who want to be their own creators of their own destiny, as opposed to us always believing that we must frame out the lots, or that we must frame out the structures and we must put in the ventilation that is suitable for them, as opposed to letting them determine their ventilation and where they want their windows, sir. I believe that time has now come, and I think that certainly the cabinet and others are a bit more sensitive to the issues. We will never be able to erase, I don't think, all of the issues of housing that have presented us over the years, but we have to get to a point where, even in relation to the quality of housing, that we also allow people an opportunity, perhaps through a type of fund, to enable persons to improve their households to be hurricane resistant and to be more resilient. You know, a lot of people are using the concrete board, or they're going to get the plywood sheets to start out. But the truth of the matter, we all know that that isn't going to last in a category 2 or a category 3. So we have to have some kind of funds created to be able to enable persons who are interested in improving, whether it's the units, whether it is their own homes, to be able to help them to make the changes that are necessary. And you know, I've remarked that there've been all of these programs over the years that have provided the quick funds for people to do things. We've got the trust loans. People have been able to create entrepreneurial activities out of things like the trust loans. Well, maybe we need to go back again to being able to provide those types of housing improvement loans, where people are able to do for themselves, but equally we allow ourselves to take care of the people who are most vulnerable, who will not, for whatever reason, be able to pay back right away as well, sir. So I think the direction in which we are going is a good one, given the constraints that we've had over the course of the past few years. And I'm a firm believer that you have to look back in order to also move forward, because at the end of the day, it is quick to forget how we have gotten here and what we've had to do in order to get to this position, to give ourselves the wiggle room in order to do the types of things that we all know in our heart of hearts that we want to do. I don't think any member of parliament in here or other ways has ever not wanted to be able to provide housing for people in this country, and proper housing for people. It hurts me, sir, when I see the conditions in which some people live, and the challenges sometimes in being able to readily be able to get the types of accommodation that I know that people need, even temporary accommodation. It is hurtful. But the truth of the matter is there are a number of systems that are broken that we are in the process of fixing. And don't let nobody fool you that all the systems in government work, because a lot of the systems have broken down. So let's be fair with ourselves. And members know that I am not going to stand here and pretend that everything is perfect, because the truth is, this has been a whole work in progress by all of us to try to make wrong things right. People have to inspect, people have to supervise, there has to be standards in what we do. We have to have people who are going to call a spade and say, well, we need to make sure that this is followed through on. So let's not fool ourselves. I can point out all the wells in the Pine that want doing, and all across Wildy and all across Haggett, all that want doing. But it doesn't mean that they're all going to get done in the time frame that I would like to get it done. I gotta give some to St. Lucie, and somebody up in Christchurch gotta get, sir, and you gotta get a couple in your constituency too, sir. So what we have to do as leaders is also to talk our people through the fact that while we know as a government that everything gotta get done, the truth is that we're gonna have to creep before we walk, because we can't get everything all done at the same time. And lastly, sir, I want to appeal to the private sector of this country. They have risen above the call of duty in many respects, whether it's been in relation to COVID, whether it's been in relation to education. I want to make a plea to them to step forward to assist this government in even greater ways with helping to find solutions to housing. Sometimes a man just wants a couple sheets of plywood or a couple blocks to be able to do what he has to do in order to get going. And I'm therefore asking that it doesn't take a lot, but the truth is we all benefit in the long term if we are able to look out and to be our brother's keepers, as we have all been raised to think and to do. We need the assistance now in communities to help lift up people, because many people have had to move in with people because of the harsh conditions that they're encountering, the number of losses of job opportunities that people have had in this period. So if the housing conditions are overcrowded, then the truth of the matter is it's going to take a little bit longer for people to get back on their feet. And therefore, while we give devices mean nothing to our children if they ain't have nowhere to plug it in. And it means nothing to a parent if at the end of the day, the children are sleeping on the floor. So I'm appealing to Barbadians, and certainly to those who are listening, sir, that the help that is required is not sometimes what you think it is. It's not just big picture things. Sometimes it's the bed, sometimes it's a stove, sometimes it's a fridge, sir. And those who have been given, we appreciate what you've been given, but I want to make the point that there are more opportunities out there now to give, and to as PM would say, many hands make light work. The opportunities are there for us to be able to give a little more to help a number of the families who can least afford it. We've done lots in relation to the Adopt a Families program to be able to keep people afloat. But the truth is that we haven't had that engineering in terms of the actual housing stock. We are building out, but that's going to still take a couple of months, Minister, to be able to build it out. That's the reality. So even people who own households, who may want to be turning their houses into apartments or to one bedrooms, I beg you, make sure that the conditions are satisfactory for people to live in. We can't be so desperate that we allow people to live in unsanitary conditions or unsuitable conditions. We have to be able to have some level of standards, and government has to be in a position to encourage people to be able to turn part of their structures into accommodation for a family. And don't tell me that you don't want children, because the truth of the matter is you can't have the children either growing up on the streets and in the conditions in which they are going in. Children are going to be children. But sir, I see too many children, the numbers of children over the COVID period that found themselves sometimes at the shelter in town and stuff like that. It was hurtful because we simply did not have enough places to put them. So it's either they go on the road or they go on the road. There really wasn't any choice. And therefore it means that we will never be able to make money back from low income housing. I think we need to get that in our heads. We can't make it. But what we make from it by making the sacrifice to put into the pot in order to build it out is we give our people a better livelihood. We give our people, and in particular our young people and our elderly, better conditions in which to live under. Lastly, sir, I just want to remind the Honourable Minister, I've made this point before, but I'm going to make it again and again and again. One of the things that we must start to look at as well in relation to the housing estates is that we have a lot of our elderly people who have been living in the two-story buildings. Many of them used to be upstairs because, as you know, the top floor is usually the two-bedroom, downstairs the bathroom, the kitchen, and the living room. And the truth of the matter is that many of our elderly are now getting too old, and in terms of their ability to maneuver the stairs, they have all of the different chronic illnesses that you can think of, sir. Many of them are now downstairs in the living room and living on the sofa, sleeping on the sofa in order to be able to get through the night because they can't go back upstairs where they used to be. And in many cases, you may not have anybody else upstairs either. So we need to ensure through housing that we have a program where we can start to do some house swapping, where those who are willing to move can move. And we also have a program where when we acquire a property, if we need to knock out a wall to make it bigger so that larger families can be accommodated, then that's what we need to do. We need to look at the bachelor quarters and make sure that we have more and more elderly living in the low-lying conditions to be able to allow greater access. Because they were built out, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael East would recall, in terms of bachelorette quarters and areas where persons with disabilities can access. But perhaps we need to revisit some of those locations, some of those residences, and make a conscious effort to ensure that the people who are living there are really the people who are in the greatest need, sir. And I therefore want to support this resolution, support what the Honourable Minister has been doing thus far. We will certainly continue to hold his feet to the fire and to make sure that on a number of the things that we have said that we want to deliver on, that we are able to do. But sir, again, I want that the public of this country understands that the road has not been easy. And without being able to have access to financial resources in order to do all of the things that we know we have to do, there are challenges, but we will overcome those challenges in the fullness of time. I thank you, sir.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And first, let me thank all those members who spoke and contributed to the debate. As I sat here and listened to all the honourable members that spoke, I guess it happens to me a lot. I cast my mind back to various experiences in my life. And one thing that I remembered, I don't know if you may be familiar, Ms. Speaker, you might be, with an artist called Chronix. I don't know if you're familiar. But Chronix, certainly the younger members in here may be familiar. But I didn't hear? Yes. I'm hearing that he sings positive lyrics. He has a song called I Can. And in that song called I Can, the first verse is remembering where you come from and looking back on where you have come from. And you know, Mr. Speaker, people often look at me and say, oh, he's a doctor, went to this place, well educated, this and so on. But Mr. Speaker, I come from an area called Dayton Road, an area that I grew up in, where all of my neighbors were people of minimal means. The people that supported my father's business. And he, in turn, was a person of minimal means that came from the Bay Land. So, it is never, ever, ever lost on me, Mr. Speaker, where I come from. My mother from Mason Hall Street. So I know full well what I haven't seen, I even experienced on my own when I was a student. So I know full well and I understand. And I see the pain in my neighbor's eyes. I see the pain and difficulty of housing, even from my father when he relates the difficulties that he had. The many days he went hungry because his mother, a single parent, could not provide. So I understand. And I always, always know where I come from. And that's why I love that song so much. That song by Chronics, I Can. And I would encourage other members to listen to it. It is an excellent song. With respect to the Leader of the Opposition asking to meet, I commit to this Honourable House that I will meet with the Leader of the Opposition to discuss the plans that we have for the development of the Crown Lands, another area in White Park Road that he said. The welfare building, and I hope this is the same building. If it is not, we will discuss whether it's the same building that he wants for Resource Center, but it is the welfare building that we are looking to do under our rejuvenation program very shortly, because currently the welfare department is being housed at what's called the Weymouth Complex, which is a rental. And what we're trying to do is reduce the rental costs of government by rejuvenating houses, buildings that are not being currently used. If it is a different building, the Leader of the Opposition can advise me, and I will look at it and see what is possible with respect to the Resource Center. The matter of the Urban Development Commission's program, I agree that the tenantry opportunity for tenants the tenants of those urban tenantries to be able to purchase their land is not currently under the National Housing Corporation or the Ministry of Housing, but it's under the Urban Development Commission. And I believe that program is still going. I don't have any information to suggest that it has ceased, but I do agree that that is a program that should continue. The Honourable Member also mentioned the fish fry area. I have no information at all about that, and I will look to investigate that and see what that. I would imagine it would be either agriculture, who would be able to give us some more information on that. But having said that, it is one government, and it's not just no silos are in this government, and we work together as one government. And I will endeavour to get that information and be able to provide it to the Member of Parliament for the area, because it's important that if he's been asked a question by his constituents, that he should be able to answer that question fully and frankly. Repairs at the National Housing Corporation. This is a problem. And I'll explain to you why. When the National Housing Corporation had 4,500 tenants, even although the amount of rent that those tenants paid was a small amount, it was still an amount that we were able to use to put to maintenance of the various units all across the country. With the last administration, they gave I think about 3,000, 2,800, almost 3,000 of those units away. But still, the maintenance of them, the cost of the maintenance remained at the National Housing Corporation. Partly because we were unable to convey them, and partly because they said that if we had given them, we still had to maintain them. And those people were in fact given letters stating that the National Housing Corporation will continue to maintain them. What that meant, Mr. Speaker, is that you had a reduction of about 60% of what would have been rental income no longer coming in, but still expected to maintain all of the units, the ones that you were given it, that you no longer had rental income, and the other rentals at the same level. So it meant that the National Housing Corporation has had difficulty and continues to have difficulty maintaining the units. So what we've done is that we've embarked on a program of finding other ways, other income, to be able to maintain the units, as well as keep our buildings going, as well, to build new units as well, because you will always need rental units. Whether you like it or not, the people that are having to rent will always be with us. Every single person will not be able to own a house, own land, and build a house. You will always have the renters with you. And we recognize that, and we're going to continue to build rental units, as well as to endeavor to maintain the ones that we have, both those that are current tenants and the ones that we've conveyed to for a time. But I endeavor, Mr. Speaker, that I intend to bring legislation, bring a policy that those that were given the units, I said it in the ministerial statement, that those that were given the units by the previous administration, we endeavor to get conveyances in their hands. We endeavor to do that, so that they could then turn around and leverage that to get a loan, to be able to educate their children, to be able to pay for a medical procedure, whatever it is. I endeavor and I give my commitment to this Parliament that I endeavor to get those conveyances in those people's hands as much as we can. And that's what we are endeavoring to do. I have instructed the ministry that that is a priority and priority number one for us, and we will not rest till it is done. The honourable members, several members also talked about resilience. And I'm not at liberty to discuss a new program that I'm working on. Less to say that hurricane straps are important. And there are many, many houses when we toured in the house in the last freak storm that did not have hurricane straps. And a lot of those houses then fell prey to losing their roof or part of their roof and so on and so forth. And I am currently investigating with two very prominent engineers the opportunity to bring a program for housing straps, but I first have to take it to Cabinet and get Cabinet's blessing. But that is another program that we're working on. Derelict houses and vacant lots, yes, it is an issue. In fact, it's mentioned in our manifesto. But of course, as a learned attorney, you would appreciate that you can't just go and put a house on somebody's land. You have to first have either their permission or their agreement or some sort of a commitment between them and you, rather than to just go and get on somebody's land. So this is another program that we're working at. We recognize that they're derelict properties, recognize that they're vacant properties. There's a combination of both. And these are things that we're working on to be able to fill that void and get as many houses built as we can, as quickly as we can, in as many places that have services, that already have the water, that already have the road, that already have the electricity as we can. Another program that the member for St. Michael South East spoke about is density reduction. And I understand her plight. Sadly, because in the Pine, a lot of those units started out as one bedroom, and you call it bachelorette units and bachelor units. But you know what? A lady does not always remain a spinster. Or a gentleman does not always remain a bachelor. After you have the house, a friend might come over and spend some time, and nature takes its course, and you have an addition to the family. And what happens? That addition, over time, because you haven't been able to get a house or get facilities, and you remain in one bedroom, that addition has additions herself. Maybe one, maybe two, maybe four. And then you have 6, 7 people, 4 are children, the 3 adults living in one bedroom. And then the third thing about it is it goes even further, because if they can't pull themselves out of that situation, those additions get additions. This is not something that I hear about. This is something I see. Pardon? No, it is not my future. But it's something that I have seen. I have seen 3, 4 generations living in a one-bedroom unit. The member for St. Michael's South East could attest to this. In a one-bedroom, 4 generations. And I recognize we have a problem. I know that is something that we have to fix, and every night, every day, I look to see what can I do? How can we find land? How can we find property? How can we build in the most efficient and effective way? And how can we get it done as quickly as possible? And at the same time, put our people back to work. Put our people back to work. There are too many people in Barbados from this last problem that we've seen, the pandemic or the ash and all the other problems that are not working. And the fastest and quickest way I could do that is to let me get a chance to put in some roads. Once I get the roads, let me get some spots and let me get some houses building. Because you can fix 2 or 3 problems. 3 problems. You can fix the housing need, you can fix the employment need, and you can fix the economic need to some extent too, because you can get the economy going again because money got to be spent to build the houses. So that is my bane of intention. That is my main focus night and day. To get our people back to work, to get some houses built, and to get these people housed and the infrastructure working as quickly as possible. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable members that spoke. I didn't imagine it would have gone this long, but we have lots of programs that we're working on, and I encourage others to come and share their ideas and their programs with me and see what we can do to make Barbados a better place. Better for people to live, better for housing, better for infrastructure, and let us help others to enjoy the dream. With those 3 words, I beg that this resolution do not pass.
The question is that this resolution do not pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we've come to the end of today's sitting, and I beg to move the adjournment of the sitting until Tuesday, the 29th of June at 10 a.m.
Questions that this honourable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 29th day of June at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 29th day of June at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.